College basketball front and center, not in a good way yesterday. 17 former college basketball players listed as defendants in an indictment. 15 of the players participated in the 2023-24 or 2024-25 seasons, and a few have actually played this season. And you start to look at the numbers being thrown around of the amount of money bet on some of these games. Betting amounts $458,000 for North Carolina A&T to lose against Towson. $424,000 on Kent State to cover the first half spread against Buffalo. $275,000 for Southern Miss to not cover a first half spread against South Alabama. $256,000 for Robert Morris to flop in the first half of a game against Northern Kentucky. Now, there's a couple things to think about here. These are smaller schools. You're going to get NIL, but not as much as you think. A lot of these schools still, they do pay NIL, but you're going to do this with a first half cover. It's easier to pull something off like this of not playing well in the first half, and then you play hard in the second half. You've already covered the bet. You're going to get paid. But the fact that you had this amount of money, I'm surprised that these games weren't flagged. Our good buddy Matt Norlander, CBS Sports, has been covering this. These are big numbers, Matt. How did somebody not notice this when they were actually happening?
Well, this has been investigated for more than a year. I actually expected this story. I was told that the feds wanted to try and get the story out before Christmas, but they had the processes. We finally got this let out of the bag in a public forum on Thursday. And if you notice the games that are affected, and you can go to cbssports.com at the bottom of that story, I've got every game that was affected. The whole thing starts in 2022 with Antonio Blakeney, a former five-star prospect, played at LSU. Had a cup of coffee with the Bulls, and now he's playing in China, averaging more than 30 points a game. And then a couple of central bad actors there got involved with him to throw some games. They allegedly got away with that for a little while, and then they thought, let's head back to the States and see if we can get some low-level college players who aren't making huge NIL deals to toss some first-half lines or affect some game outcomes. And the list of those games, it begins February 17th of 2024, and then the most recent one in this specific case is January 11, 2025. So I think, Dan, to your question, I think that they had a line on this. The NCAA has also, a number of the players that were charged in this, they've already been found out, named, and banned from the NCAA for life, but it's the grand scope of this. Now, it's 29 games that were affected. In the scheme of things, it's a very, very low number among all Division I games that are played, and we're talking New Orleans versus Lamar, Robert Morris, Northern Kentucky, Fordham Duquesne, but there are, I know with the shirt Paulie's got on right now, there are a few former DePaul players that were caught up in this. That's the only power conference program that's affiliated with this. But still, 29 is 29 way too many. This is a huge, huge deal. It's a huge story. And for anyone that sees the story and thinks, all right, I never watched Tulane play East Carolina. Like, what do I care about a Coppin State, South Carolina State game? Remember, Major League Baseball had this issue with its pitchers. We saw what happened with the huge case, Jonte Porter, the separate case, Terry Rozier, Chauncey Billups with the illegal gambling ring. So this is pervasive throughout sports. This one right here, though, as it pertains to all of the games affected, Dan, this really stands to be the most widespread game-fixing scandal in the history of college sports.
And yeah, they caught this, or this was brought to light, but you wonder the number of games that have not been flagged. And people got away with this. But are they betting, are these bets legal? Like, are they offshore account? Because if I see 424, 458, North Carolina A&T to lose against Towson?
Yeah, so I am not someone who is logging onto the phone and logging bets. That's just not what I do. But my understanding, obviously, is that if you have an individual game with an individual bettor that is going to bet that amount, and almost every single legal online sports book, they're going to flag that immediately and take it off the board. What they were trying to do here was have a network, literally a criminal conspiracy to log these bets, hope they didn't get flagged. They obviously did. There's not just the sports books that did this. There's third-party watchdogs that work with the sports books, that work with the NCAA, that were tracking this. My understanding also is that, this was a criminal investigation. They don't want to tip it off too early. They want to get all the evidence they can get so that they can bring charges against 26 people that came down, many of them former players in general. But yes, this was all done, or mostly done, in person at sports books online at a variety of different sports books. And this is just what we have here. There are still, I'm talking to some sources both this week and back in the fall, there are still believed to be some other former players that could still be up for some real trouble here. But this was the big story out of the Eastern District of Pennsylvania, and now we wait to see how it advances, and if all of the 26 charged wind up going to prison. The potential prison times vary by person, but you mentioned this before, 4 players in college basketball, or I should say, were in college basketball, played within the past week. Simeon Cottle at Kennesaw State. I know most of your audience isn't going to know who that is. He's one of the best mid-major players in America, so there is a little bit of a shock value there that you even had guys who had allegedly participated in this in the previous seasons still playing as recently as earlier this week. Obviously, all of those players now have been suspended.
Has he been arrested?
He has been charged. There has not been a release that he has specifically been arrested. There have been some arrests made, but the charges come down. The indictment has come down. It's not specifically been revealed if Cottle and some of the other current players have been arrested.
And we're done with prop bets in college, correct?
You would hope. So I'm so glad you brought that up, Dan, because that is the other part of this. So Charlie Baker has been pushing to end prop bets.
He's the president of the NCAA.
President of the NCAA. I've heard you talk about this on your show as well. He wants to get rid of it, not just so that players can't be tempted to affect their own prop bet lines and be induced to do game manipulation. As you well know, also college basketball players, college football players, they are the subject of severe online harassment out in public in their DMs, and eliminating prop bets at the collegiate level, which needs to be done by Congress. The NCAA is waiting on Congress to basically fix all of its issues. Timeline on that very much remains to be seen, but that is the hope and that is the goal. But as you well know, even if we do get to that point in 26, in 27, in 28, and prop bets are no longer a thing in the legal gambling laps that are out there, it still isn't going to prevent the idea of someone, getting compromised and someone going to someone and say, hey, because these players were paid $10,000, $20,000, sometimes $30,000 just to say, hey, make sure that your team doesn't cover that first half 11.5 point spread. So that prop bets can't solve, but it's kind of 6 and 1/2 dozen in the other, Dan. The fact that gambling and all these ads and all these apps out there, it's just everywhere. So the fact that it makes the watchdogging and the flagging of it easier to catch. But you can also make the argument that it makes it that much more likely that it is just, since it is so pervasive in the culture, that it is that much easier to find a player or two, or in this case, dozens, to participate in a scheme like this, because it's becoming more and more just an accepted part of the culture. And it's why that Supreme Court case that got basically flipped 7-8 years ago was such a massive one as it pertains to our industry.
Thanks for joining us on short notice, Matt. Have a great weekend.
Appreciate you, Dan. Thank you.
Matt Norlander, CBS senior writer, analyst, podcast host. Yeah, you go after the small guy. And as I've said numerous times, nobody's going to notice this game. Hey, we're North Carolina A&T. Nobody knows who we are. It's the amount of money that was bet on the game. Like right there, something's up. I can't imagine that amount of money on all of North Carolina A&T's games. $458,000. And if you're going to fix a game, you fix it in the first half. Hey, you got off to a slow start, didn't play well. Next thing you know, hey, we're down 15. Second half, now let's play. You get paid anywhere from $10,000 to $30,000. And these players are getting NIL. Now, it's not a lot, but they're getting paid NIL. It might be $10,000 or $20,000, $30,000, $40,000. Upwards $100,000 maybe at some of these smaller schools. But they are getting paid. But this is where you think nobody is going to notice it. Yes, Todd.
And what happens when a player gets involved once and they realize either they made a terrible mistake or they just don't want to participate anymore? Who are these characters that they're dealing with where they can't just be one and done, where they're going to be expected to continue doing that for them?
Well, you go back to the Boston College scandal back in the 70s. Once you fix one, you're in. They got you. And what are you going to do? Call the cops? You're going to call the NCAA? Once you're in, you're in. And, these are kids. Once again, they don't think they're going to get caught. Nobody's going to notice this. But you start getting text messages, and then, then you text somebody else. Now you're bringing in more and more. Somebody tells somebody. Then you have somebody who's going to say to their buddy, hey, you want to get in on this, all right? And give me a piece of it too. But go with the first half cover, all right? And then that guy tells somebody, and then that guy tells somebody. Nobody keeps a secret. Yeah, Paul.
And you know why this might be easier to hide or keep under the rug these days? Is because if a kid from Kennesaw State all of a sudden has $5,000 on him, he could just say, yeah, it's my NIL money. It could be explained away, and it's from the bettors. It's from the gamblers. The NIL kind of covers your bases.
Kennesaw State's Simeon Cottle. He is the Conference USA Player of the Year, preseason Conference Player of the Year, averaging 20 a game. He's involved in this. There's a player at Delaware State. There's a player at Eastern Michigan. There's a player at Texas Southern. They were playing as of a couple of nights ago. It's not going away. The watchdogs, you have to rely on them to make sure that these things are flagged, and normally they are. Whenever you see a line that is, all of a sudden it goes from like 3 to 9 or 9 to 3, and then you go, what's up with this? Inside information, then they take it off the board.